Good evening, Rowan. It's the evening of the 22nd of October 2015 and it's just before midnight. I hope you like my second instalment of my holiday photos, which I took when I went on a trip to Avila in May 2004, days before you had me thrown out of St Michael's Church. I've been to Avila on numerous occasions, but I thought you'd especially like to see the photos from that occasion. So on the left there is the Convent of the Incarnation in Avila, which was the first convent that Teresa entered, and that's a very beautiful statue of her there called Teresa Andariega. And Andariega means someone who likes to walk, and it refers to her journeys around Spain making foundations of new convents, discalced Carmelite convents, as she was trying to reform the Carmelite order. And you do say in your lecture that she founded over a dozen convents. It was significantly more than a dozen. She founded 17 convents in fact. And the picture on the right is taken from on top of the city wall of Avila, or on top of the wall of the fortress, depending on who you listen to, I suppose. So without further ado, I'll move on to my final instalment about Interior Castle. But don't panic, because I still haven't finished with your lecture. There's still plenty more to say. And you only spoke about her for 25 minutes, and I don't know anything about Thomas Merton. So anyway, before I start quoting you, I'm just going to make a brief comment that the Mary and Martha that are referred to are sisters who were friends of Jesus, and the relevant story about them is in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. The story doesn't really need explaining here, just to say that Teresa uses Mary to represent the contemplative and Martha to represent the active. So this is the quotation now from you. And at the end of the day, what happens? I think you're talking about the end of the contemplative journey, the prayer of union or something like that, although you don't specify, but it's only because I know a great deal about the subject I'm able to infer that from this rather vague statement. So this is what you say. And at the end of the day, what happens? Mary and Martha join hands. The active and the contemplative come together. Well, I suppose that is kind of the end of the day for somebody who's actually on the contemplative journey, but Teresa doesn't recommend it for everybody. So there would be a different end of the day for somebody who wasn't a contemplative. So I don't think it's a good idea really to imply that it's a suitable path for everybody, because not everybody's suited to it. And particularly when you're talking about Teresa, because she emphatically states that not everybody is suited to the contemplative life. So you go on to say, the ultimate state when you get right where God most fully is. There is no gap between what you do and what you pray. God is working in your actions, your prayers, the lot. That's actually true. That may be the one true statement you've made in the entire lecture. Well, it is true for someone who's reached the prayer of union, which would be the end point of a contemplative journey, although you can't say it ends because it continues into eternity. But in this life, anyway, for the majority of people on the contemplative journey would not reach any further than the prayer of union, although Teresa does mention some other stages after that. But it obviously doesn't refer to you, because you're not even a Christian. Then you go on to say, Christ walks among the pots and pans when you're doing the washing up. That's mysticism. Well, you know, I had to remake this video because it took me so long to unpack that I went over 15 minutes. So I'm going to have to be very quick. First, I'm going to define mysticism, and I've selected definitions in the way that it relates to Saint Teresa. So, belief in direct experience of God, and belief that union with God may be attained through contemplation and self-surrender. There are other definitions, but that's the definition I'm working with. So, Christ walks among the pots and pans. When you're doing the washing up, that's mysticism. So if I go and wash up now, then I'm in a mystical state, am I? Or if anybody else on the planet does that, then that's mysticism. You achieve union with God through doing the washing up. That does sound like what you're saying. It's quite a bizarre statement. Christ walks among the pots and pans. When you're doing the washing up, that's mysticism. Well, it's a misquotation from St. Teresa anyway, because it refers to a statement she makes in her Book of Foundations, chapter 5, part 8. I haven't got that available to me in English. I've got it in Spanish here. This is my rough translation of the relevant part. Foundations, chapter 5, part 8. My daughters, don't be discouraged when obedience employs you in exterior things. Understand that if one is in the kitchen, among the pots and pans walks the Lord, helping you in the interior and the exterior. So, taken in the context of Teresa's Carmelite reform, as you rightly said in your lectures, she didn't want the nuns to have servants. She wanted them to undertake all the tasks of the convent themselves. And this is part of her encouraging them to see it as part of their spiritual life, that they undertake menial tasks. You described the convent of the Incarnation as an upper-class boarding house, which was quite ridiculous, really, because who were the servants then? Who was doing the menial work? If it was a boarding house for the upper class, they didn't have people who weren't nuns in the cloister, so they had lay sisters and choir sisters. The problem with the convent was that the wealthy nuns still had all their resources with them and could employ servants to do all their menial tasks. And the poorer sisters sometimes didn't have enough clothes to wear and were going around barefoot. So there was a great disparity of wealth within the convent, and this is one of the reasons that Teresa wanted reform. I don't know. Anyway, when you're doing the washing up, that's mysticism. You're also... It's quite hard to address the points that you make because your foundational assumptions are incorrect. I'm going to come on to this. I mentioned it a bit in a video I did the other day about mortal sin and a soul in mortal sin not even being in the castle. But something that both Teresa and St. John of the Cross talk about a lot when they're talking about advancement in spiritual life and the contemplative journey, they talk about the development of virtue and strength developing through virtue and the grace of God in prayer, bestowing virtue on the soul. And you never mention virtue. It's like you can have a prayer life and access to God, and virtue is totally irrelevant. So before we get to the point of whether nuns should be doing their own washing up or not, they shouldn't be committing adultery and slandering people and contributing to the murder of people all over the world, which is what you do. Just forget about washing up. Forget about contemplative prayer. Forget about it all. You're way back. You're not even a Christian. And I don't just say that because of the satanic doctrine that you teach and the way that you conduct yourself. It's the simple fact that if you really had any belief in final judgment or any hope of heaven or any fear of hell, you wouldn't be acting the way that you are. All you're trying to do is save your skin and save your face. And you'll bully and threaten and try and coerce your victims just to save your own skin. If you believed you were going to face judgment for that, you wouldn't be doing it. So forget about contemplative prayer. You're not even a Christian. Forget about it. It's irrelevant to you. If you want to study it as an external academic, fair enough. But you don't even have any academic integrity because you just make things up and then say that other people said them. Like St. Teresa said this when she didn't say it at all. And you say this about books that have been in print for 500 years. Nearly 500 years. All we have to do is open it and check and find out that you're lying. You've got no integrity at any level. It's like you've set off from the north of England to go on a journey to Scotland, and you're giving us this fantastic lecture about what Scotland is like, what Scottish geography and history and culture is like, and what Scottish people are like, and what you should do if you go to Scotland. But you've actually set off in the opposite direction. You're heading south. Not only are you not in Scotland, you've not got any hope of even getting there because you're going in the wrong direction to start with. And this is a real problem in addressing the things that you say. You've started from the wrong place. You're not where you think you are. And you're just giving a very false impression to people who don't already have knowledge in the subject. So just pack it in. Pack it in. You're a very wearisome man, you know. You keep going over the same rubbish over and over again, and you think there's going to be a different outcome. Well, there isn't. Anyway, that's my video for today. I hope I haven't ranted on longer than 15 minutes again, but I really got going, and that's why I've had to make the video again. But don't think I've forgotten about arresting you either, so be alert. And there's more videos to come on the very same lecture. So have a good day and good night.